your review. And Harlan Nimmo is here. He lives in the subdivision and is a member of the board of directors of the Crystal Oaks Bridge Association. So he'll be able to tell you a little bit about the process from the neighborhood side. And a little bit of a background on this. When the Sewell family platted this subdivision, they dedicated the roads and the bridge to a predecessor association to the Crystal Oaks Bridge Association. And there are quite a few lots that are in the area that use the bridge and the road that were not part of that subdivision. The properties are highly benefited from the bridge. In fact, it's pretty much the only game in town for properties to get to and from Highway 133. It's a critical link infrastructure. The neighborhood's done a pretty good job over the years of figuring out how to maintain the roads and how to get participation, but it's been determined that the neighborhood wants to formalize this road agreement and also wants to plan ahead for the bridge so that the bridge will always have the maintenance it needs. And in a far future, that there'll be a mechanism to potentially raise taxpayer funds for the people who use it to replace it or do major repairs to it so that there isn't an interruption in access, which would be very difficult for this neighborhood to have something like that. So that's the genesis for why the district is considered, why it's being put before you. Just a few things about the service plan. A metro district needs to have at least two of the services that are on a list statutorily, and the two that this district is going to provide are improvements and repairs, maintenance to the roads and bridges we talked about, and also traffic safety protection items, things like speed limit signs or other safety reflectors, things like that, just to make sure that people travel the road in a safe manner. So those are the two services and two is a minimum under state law. So that's that part in section 1. The financial plan for the service plan is to set the initial mill rate to raise $30,000 a year so that there can be enough money to do the maintenance that's already happening on the HOA level by participation, and also a little bit of a reserve to build so that there'll be some money in the future to begin to do planning and other kinds of more long-term repairs or replacement items. You'll see that comes in at a mill levy of 13.5. The next thing that I would call your attention is that there are, like I said, or was presented, there's two HOAs there, Seven Oaks Commons and the Crystal Oaks Bridge HOA. They're working together. And there's other 5 or 6 properties that are not in either of these two associations, but do use the bridge and roads. So because of fairness, it's determined that they should be included in the district as well. So essentially, we went through that work session with the county commissioners earlier today. It went very well. We're looking forward to your comments and questions. If all goes as we hope, we'll be back before the commissioners on November 3rd with a notice to public hearing. And then if all goes well after that, we'll be presenting a petition to the district court to ask them to approve that the district be set out to the voters who own properties in this proposed district to actually vote to create the district. So that's in a nutshell, how the process will work. We're looking at much later next year before the district would be put in place, and then the following year before any tax revenue would start to accumulate to reach the goals of the district. At the time that there's a vote, an election put in place, then there'll be also a slate of directors that would be approved. And then the district would basically function like any other special district after that. There would be election of directors every so often. And the mill would be collected based on the amount that's set initially. And if there was going to be a need for any kind of a bond issue in the future or an increase in the mill because of additional burdens that the district is going to take on, that would be determined by vote of the neighbors or the taxpayers in that district, the property owners essentially. I think that sort of covers the initial take at it. Ready for any questions that you have for us.
Questions for Eric and his team?
I have a question.
Cliff.
What's the life expectancy of the bridge that's presently there?
I will ask Harlan to address that if you would.
Yeah, I can't give you an accurate estimation of that as far as estimates from engineers or anything like that. What I can tell you that we just recently redid the decking on the bridge just earlier this year, and the last time we did that, the decking lasted for about 10 years. The overall structure, we had some issues with one of the abutments being undermined by the current of the Crystal River, and we did about a $30,000 project that was all permitted through the county to place a bunch of large boulders to protect that abutment. I would say just my estimation would be that it should give us another 20 years of good service at this rate. But if Mother Nature could throw a curveball at us at any time, and high water and trees coming down the Crystal and such could quickly turn that into that 10 or 20 years into 6 months.
Does that bridge get an engineering inspection regularly?
It does not.
Not at all.
I don't know of any engineering inspections that have taken place in the last 9 years that I've been involved with the Bridge Association there. But that is one thing that with a more reliable funding mechanism and creating this district, that's something we'd have more opportunities to be able to do that.
Okay, and that's part of your plan to, state highways rate their bridges and determine what they're going to replace based on rating. I would think nobody wants to drive across that bridge if it were on the verge of collapsing. I mean, you told me about abutments, but a lot of things can cause a bridge to fail. I guess I would like to know that you have a plan to have it inspected. And I don't think inspections is an annual thing, but I don't come from Road and Bridge. This is P&Z. But I would think every 10 years, somebody would want to be getting a look at it and make sure it's structurally sound.
If I may, in the road improvement section of the service plan, it doesn't say specifically that there will be an inspection of the bridge, but it's implied in the infrastructure burden that the district is taking on, that there would need to be an inspection and an analysis of the bridge in order to maintain it or potentially repair it or replace it. It would have to happen, I would think.
Okay. What page is that you just referred to? Where is this?
Well, the road improvements section in number 1 is page 1 in the middle of the page. The district will perform the powers granted in the Special District Act. It says, finance, design, construct, acquire, install, maintain, provide for road improvements through the construction, installation of curbs, gutters,
Are you
etc.
reading from the resolution or are you reading from the packet?
From the actual service plan, which is part of the packet.
Ah, okay. Sorry. I've
then
even got
section
highlights
that-
on this page.
And then there's section 3, which also, points out that the roads and bridges already constructed, but the district will provide maintenance, repair, and capital improvements to existing structure. So I think your point is excellent, and it's something that we can look at in terms of being more clear about that, what that means based on inspection and engineering. It's something we can talk about. we still have the ability, I think, to work on the verbiage here.
Okay. I think you understand why I think that's important. So I will let the next commissioner ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions for Eric, Harlan, or Becky? So Eric, did you point out when would this go back to the 62 homeowners for a vote? Is that after the district court?
Well, there's two places, there's three opportunities for neighbors to continue to be involved. And they have already, to a certain extent, that Arlene can tell you about. But there's a noticed public hearing of the commissioners in November. Then there's a petition to the court, which requires 30% of the landowners to sign. And then there's if everything goes as planned, there'll be a vote. Once the court authorizes it, there'll be an election, and all property owners are going to have an opportunity to participate in the election, the same way there's an election for school district or any other district.
And that would be mid-year 2022 or end of year 2022? That election?
Mid-year, because the goal would be to have, well, exactly when that will be is not determined yet, but it's somewhere in the middle to the latter end of next year.
Okay. Additional questions for Eric, Harlan, or Becky?
One more.
Cliff?
I seem to recall the county has two lots on or within this district, this taxing district, and yet they're not contributing. Is that correct, Merritt?
But I think by law, the county would be exempt from taxation and property tax, like any government entity. That's my sense.
What would happen if they sold their property up there? The county sold it, let's say, private ownership.
Oh, I think that because we're including those properties in the district, I think they would become taxable.
Okay. Good answer.
Additional
Thanks.
questions, Eric, Harlan, or Becky, or Suzanne, in terms of process? Again, Eric, thank you again for doing this twice in one day.
Oh, sure.
Any other commissioner questions? Otherwise, at this point, I would entertain a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Pitkin County, Colorado, recommending approval of the Crystal Oaks Metropolitan District Service Plan. Again, to Suzanne, I would double check the June 1, 2021 date, which is probably October 5th or October 1st, which is in the resolution. So that would be the only amendment to the resolution, unless any other commissioner comments necessitated an adjustment or a change to the resolution. But I didn't hear anything this evening. Do I have a motion?
I will so move.
Jasmine is a first. Do I have a second?
I will second.
That was Cliff.
Yes.
Any other further discussion with Suzanne Wolf, Eric Gross, Harlan Nemo, or Becky Muller? Any other further comments from or questions from planning and zoning commissioners? I don't see any hands on the Zoom. At this point, there's a motion and a second, which is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Pitkin County, Colorado, recommending approval of the Crystal Oaks Metropolitan District Service Plan. All those in favor, Joe Kraybacher.
Yes, in favor, Joe Kraybacher.
Thank you. Yvonne Kassar.
So in favor.
Thank you. Jasmine Tiger.
Yes.
Zachary Matthews.
Yes.
Cliff Weiss.
Yes.
Suzanne Caskey.
Yes.
And Jeffrey Woodruff is a yes. And quick math says we have 7 yeses, 2 non-attendance recorded, but we passed 7-0. And again, Eric, Harlan, and Becky, thank you for your time, and thank you for doing this twice in one day. And Colorado State Statute really appreciates you guys coming here at 5 o'clock at night. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, everybody.
Likewise, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Harlan. We do have one other agenda item this evening. It is the long-range planning update, which includes Cindy Hubin, Ellen Sassano, and Zachary Fugitive Hendricks. And the fugitive is a reference to an article that was out about methane capture earlier in the week, which Zachary Hendricks featured prominently. So it looks like, judging from the characters on the Zoom, that Zachary, this is your presentation, but I also see Cindy has joined us.
Yeah, if you don't mind, maybe I'll start out, Jeffrey, and just say that tonight we wanted to update you on several things that are more long range in nature, and wanted to say, if you have any questions as we go along, please just interrupt us and let us know. And Yvonne and Suzanne, as new members, you might have more questions since you have never heard of some of the things we're working on, but or you might not have heard. But we want to cover a couple things tonight. Ellen will cover the master plans and where we are on our update of our master plans for the county. And then Zach is going to cover everything that we've been working on with climate action and how that relates then to the next topic, which I'm going to be talking about, an update on where we are with a look at growth management. So we have those three topic areas, and Ellen will start off with the master plans.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been a while since I've seen you. It's good to see. Gosh, everybody's on Zoom tonight, huh? Right. I am going to for most of you, several of you have worked in the past on the development of master plans and updated master plans, but there are a few of you who have not been participated in that process. And so I'm going to give a little bit of background on why we have master plans. And then, as Cindy alluded to, I'll go into where we are in terms of our update to existing master plans, and then cover process briefly. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Thanks. So, yeah, in why do we even have master plans? In 2002, we were mandated by Colorado State Statute to adopt master plans. And the idea was to address land use policy issues on topics like zoning, environment, transportation, transit, recreation, open space trails, and the like. There's been a recent update to the state statute in September of 2020. The statute also required counties to incorporate recommendations for access to solar, wind, or other alternative energy sources, and population growth and housing. And while population growth and housing have been issues in the county for years, the alternative energy sources is an issue that's become more relevant since that initial state statute was adopted in 2002. So all of these elements have been and will continue to be addressed in the master plans. So in terms of a timeline, in 1987, we adopted the Down Valley Master Plan. And at that time, it was a comprehensive master plan for the entire county as a whole. In 2003, to comply with the 2002 statute, The county adopted actually 10 master plans for the rural portion of the county. We looked at 10 neighborhood areas. Basically, rather than looking at the rural area as a whole, we acknowledge that there really are unique characteristics in all of the individual valleys that exist in the county today. There are also 2 plans for the urban growth boundary areas that were adopted not in 2003, but a little bit later on in 2012 and 2013. In 2014, we began the process of updating those 2003 plans, which typically we think of as being in place for about 10 years. We're a little off the back, but we've done a lot of work on updating those plans that were initially adopted in 2003. On this slide, on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the rural area plans that exist. And in black are the plans that have been updated since 2003. And in blue are the plans that are in process or will be in process for update. On the right-hand column, these are the urban area plans that exist. And I won't go into any detail on any of these specific plans that have already been adopted, but I will go into some detail on where we are in terms of updating these plans in blue. So we have 2 plans that are in progress at the moment. The Castle Creek Master Plan is one that we actually updated in 2018. It was distributed to the Castle Creek Caucus at that time. And for various reasons, the caucus was not able to respond to or review the draft. And so that update was put on hold. And due to the delay, we've had to update the plan documents to ensure they continue to be current. And a new redline version of the plan will actually be available up on our website in the next week. And we will once again begin the public outreach for that plan update. In the meantime, we put a lot of work into updating the East of Aspen Independence Plan. And that's one that will be coming before you in the relatively near future, hopefully. In the next couple of months. And so we've developed, we've updated the existing conditions report, sent that out to the caucus, the East of Aspen Caucus, which is a portion of the entire planning area, and posted that for review in April of this year. The draft plan itself was posted for review in August of this year. And since that time, staff has held 2 public meetings and done public outreach concerning the update of that plan. So in addition to the public meetings, we've reached out to people by phoning them and primarily talking to them in meetings and getting a hold of them by phone. Really trying to get as many people involved in review of that plan as we can. So just as a preview of what you'll be looking at in the East of Aspen area plan update, this is just a map that we have in the existing conditions report, identifying the East of Aspen area plan area boundary, which is huge. The area consists of about 112,000 acres. It's big. It's primarily federal lands, but it's been broken up into several neighborhood planning areas because it is so large. It incorporates the East of Aspen Caucus area, which runs along Highway 82 here, called the Taggart's Lake West area. And then it incorporates an area that goes further up the pass called Taggart's Lake East up to the top of the county boundary. On the west side of the planning area boundary is the Aspen Mountain Richmond Ridge area. And then in this northern quadrant is the Smuggler Hunter Creek neighborhood planning area. So Lots of acreage with a lot of common uses, actually. Right. There's also an existing land use map and description in the existing conditions report. Again, just identifying this area as having a significant amount of public lands. Most of the developed residential areas along the valley floors here, along Highway 82, up here in Hunter Creek. And then there's also some development, residential development up here along Richmond Ridge. And then the ski area, Aspen Ski area is located in this area. And the western boundary of the plan is generally runs along the Richmond Ridge area. Or Richmond Ridge, I should say, proper. And we also look at current zoning. Again, most of this area is federal lands in rural remote zoning. The AR10 zone, residential zone runs along the highway and again up here in Hunter Creek. And then the ski rec zone covers the Aspen Mountain ski area. We also updated the build out analysis for this area, and we'll do that for all of the updates that will be coming before you. I'm not going to go into detail. You'll see this, and we'll talk about it in depth when you review the plan. So for this particular plan, there are several recommendations made for modifications, including changes to zoning, and the zoning changes primarily relate to the rural remote zone district and maintaining the character for that zone district. But it also looks at changes to zoning of public lands. Growth management direction changes basically suggest that we look at growth management through the lens of climate change, and Zach is going to delve into that topic. On affordable housing, the recommendations are similar to those made in the 2003 plan, with the exception that there's a recommendation to buy down existing housing to avoid creating growth as a result of building new housing. Recreational use is primarily focused on recognition of the fact that there is so much recreational use increase has been so much increase in recreational use over the years. And there's some focus on the North Star Preserve and the fact that that has been heavily used, and some recommendations for addressing that use. And then new to all of the plans are sections on climate change and resiliency. And clearly that's something that's become very relevant since the plans were last adopted in 2003. One of the things that's come to light in review of both the East of Aspen plan and the Castle Creek plan for updates is that they share, I don't know how well you can see these maps, but as I said, the western boundary for the East of Aspen master plan runs generally along the Richmond Ridge. And this area to the west of the East of Aspen planning area is actually the Castle Creek planning area. And on the left here, you can see this is actually the Castle Creek planning area. And again, here's that Richmond Ridge. And what these plans have brought to light is that we really need to be looking at both of them together and making some, as both of them have a lot of common land use and issues, and the west side of the ridge actually provides access to the east side of the ridge. They both have various types of recreational use, and we need to be acknowledging the common land uses and zoning. Rural remote zoning is a significant component on both sides of this ridge. So We will be trying to make sure that we have consistent recommendations relating to zoning and use in both of these master plans. So that is something new. So the master plans that we anticipate updating once we have gotten the Castle Creek and East of Aspen area plans adopted are Brush Creek, Owl Creek, and the Pitkin Basalt Junction plan, also known as the GAP plan. In terms of process, by state statute, the Planning and Zoning Commission is responsible for master plan review and adoption. And so once we get the plan updates reviewed by the public that live and work in the areas covered by those plans, we will bring them to you first in a preliminary informal review, a work session format, so that we can work through some of the details before getting into a public hearing for adoption. After an informal review with you in a work session, we will go to the Board of County Commissioners in a work session format to basically just to update them on where we are with these plans and make them aware of changes that may be coming. Then we will schedule public hearings at the Planning and Zoning Commission for adoption, public hearing or hearings, depending on what's necessary. We'll bring it back to the Board of County Commissioners for ratification. And a really important component will be the public outreach throughout the entire plan process. We really rely on the general public and caucuses where they exist to help us develop and update these plans. So there is an ongoing effort to make sure that our public outreach is as robust as we can make it. And that's really all I have in terms of a presentation, but I'd be glad to take questions. And I can go back to slides if need be. Suzanne, or Jeffrey, do you want to identify or call it?
Sorry, commissioner questions or staff questions for Ellen in terms of her presentation. I'm looking for a hand, but while we're looking for a hand, Ellen, are we hoping to get Castle and East of Aspen in 2021?
Yes. We are hoping. Cindy is.
We miss our long-range planners is what I'm trying to say. We've
Yes.
just been doing caseload, a lot of caseload.
No, absolutely. That is our intent. That's our hope. And so yeah, and simple answer is yes.
Yeah. And do we have the buy-in from Castle Creek this time, given it's been 3 years? Or do you feel like you have better buy-in? Because I did attend one of your East of Aspens, and I was impressed that both the corporates, the federal entities, as well as the homeowners were in attendance. So I feel like you're getting the traction in terms of East of Aspen. Are you getting similar with Castle Creek?
You know, we're doing our best. We really haven't had we have not had a lot of participation, honestly, from a large group out of Castle Creek, but we are working on it. We're going to do everything we can to engage as many people as we can. To date, we have not had a lot of input from a large segment of the Castle Creek group.
So that would likely come second, East of Aspen would come first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And Suzanne Caskey had a question for
Yes, I do.
Ellen as well.
And mine are similar to yours, Jeffrey. I've just stated them a little bit differently. In terms of the caucus areas, my experience in the past in working with caucuses was that the caucuses that we worked with Woody Creek, Maroon Creek, Castle Creek, Old Snowmass were very active and stayed up to date on what the issues were and had a lot to say about those. Ellen, is there any? Now, I know that there was a split between Maroon and Castle, and I know that Maroon has stayed quite active as a caucus. But are you saying, do you just, is there any life in the Castle Creek caucus at all?
Well, life, I hope so.
I mean, are you seeing it exhibited?
My,
Can I speak to this a little?
So Ellen and then Cliff, please.
well, I'll respond briefly. I'll tell you what I know, and that is that Joe Wells, who is our caucus representative for Castle Creek, has distributed all of the information that we've sent to him on the Castle Creek plan update to the caucus membership. And he, according to Joe, he's had a hard time getting a lot of participation. And so we may have to try different methods for outreach in that area. But he has not been very successful based on my conversations with him. I hate to speak for him, but in getting a lot of participation.
So Cliff had his hand up as well, Ellen, sorry.
Yeah, Beth, jump in there.
I am a member of the Castle Creek caucus. And I can tell you, I haven't seen, Castle Creek is strangely enough very well organized and uses email. They must have 100+ names, email addresses on their list. And Joe keeps us abreast of a lot of things going on in the county and the city where it affects Castle Creek. But I have seen nothing in years, not a draft, not a thing regarding a master plan. He once referred to it that it was a big job, but I've not seen him reach out to ask anyone to help. I'll go so far as to say he might be a bottleneck right now because it's just not his highest priority. And most of the homeowners up there are, well, I don't know how many are second homeowners as a percentage. Interestingly, the Castle Creek caucus dips down to where I live, which is right next to the hospital. There are pockets of county, unincorporated Pitkin County down here. So, and I don't think he reaches out as well down here. And there are quite a number of, because this is multi-unit family housing. I don't see the kind of numbers I would expect in terms of the emails. He's primarily upper Castle Creek Valley. It's really, and that's where he lives. So that's what he knows and that's what he represents. I would almost say that where I live shouldn't be a part of Castle Creek, even though at Castle Creek, I can hit it from my door at the road. It's two completely different worlds. So in terms of trying to get a master plan, I could reach out to him and let him know that we've been discussing this. I'm not really sure. I guess I'm asking you all, is there anything I can do to move it along?
Well, go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, yes, Cliff, we'll reach out to you. I have a couple ideas of some new life, Suzanne, that we might be able to drum up a little bit in the valley and try to get people, more engaged in the master plan effort. So we're really just, I don't want you to think, Cliff, that you should have been getting a ton of emails recently. You should have gotten those a lot in 2018 when we had everything updated and ready to roll. And more recently, we've been getting the existing conditions and the red line copy of the plan up and running. And Joe has attended, when you asked him to attend, the East of Aspen master plan meetings in order to talk about how they relate with the Ridge area, the Richmond Hill Ridge area. So he did show up for our last East of Aspen master plan meeting. And like Ellen said, we're going to have the new plan posted on the website within the week, or within a week. I'm not sure what she said exactly. So I think that it's within a week, we'll have all that posted. And at that point, we'll do a push. And I think I've got some ideas, ACES is now part of Castle Creek. Up, at the end, we had some interaction back in 2015. I don't know if you guys remember, but a lot of interaction with the recreation groups, and took a look at the off-road vehicle work there with the policy with the county, and had most of the recreation groups, the mountain bikers, the Jeepers, all those people represented in several well-attended outreach meetings. So we've got potential to survey those folks again and ask them, their thoughts, as well as maybe some contacts down in the lower part of Castle Creek. So definitely we'll reach out to you for your help on that.
I'm glad to know that, Joe is doing something, versus nothing. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, we'll definitely reach out to you. Thanks. And Cindy's right. We have, with the exception of inviting Castle Creek caucus members to join in the East of Aspen Master Plan public outreach meetings we've had. Yeah, there hasn't been a recent push to bring the Castle Creek caucus members into review of the Castle Creek plan, but we will be soon reaching out. So we will reach out to you for help. That would be great. And Suzanne, I know you had your hand up as well, but I will say that in finishing responding to your first question, where the caucuses are active, very active, most of the plan updates have been completed. Those are, those caucuses got on it, and we've got those updates done. So the remaining areas, I think the Brush Creek caucus is, now that it's up and running, now that they have a voice, I think they're going to be very involved in the update to their plan. We'll see where we go with Owl Creek. And that's historically has not been. So.
May I just say, with Owl Creek, we did do an existing conditions report and got that out to the Owl Creek caucus, and very little comment came back on that. So we're kind of sitting on that one for a little bit while we get East of Aspen and Castle under our belt there.
So I interrupted, Suzanne.
Yes, I was going to ask you something else, but I was also just thinking that maybe it's time to try the old tried and true method of meet in the Aspen Valley Hospital parking lot for free beer and see how many people show up and then show them the plan.
We'll put you in charge of that.
Good. Okay, I can do that. One thing that I was noticing through your update, Suzanne Ellen, is that when I served on P&Z before, it happened to be a P&Z or maybe two different P&Zs who were very interested in long-term planning. And in large part because the caseload was maddeningly busy and high and complex at the time. Mm-hmm. And we began to realize over time that we were constantly fighting fires. And we were too late every time we came along. And that a lot of it was because we hadn't pulled ourselves together as a community, caucus by caucus, to figure out what people really wanted, what ranchers wanted for their land that was still open and available, what the adjoining environmentalist groups wished for on that particular land. And the good part was that once we started all getting together, we found out, much to our surprise, that we still all wanted the same things. We still valued the same things, even if we didn't agree at first on how to go about it. But that particular planning commission, we were so concerned about long range planning and sort of getting out there and getting ahead, and not always being a group that, you know, cried over what was going on in town and wrung our hands, but figured out maybe we and the community could plan ahead for what we wanted and then state it and put it in writing. And in that case, I think we went to an extreme maybe in that I think there were, I can't even remember how many people were on the commission at the time, but a little over half of us agreed to do double duty for a while. And we formed a temporary long-term planning commission that said we would come to regular meetings for caseload and all of that, but we would also agree to go to engage on site on a caucus's territory and start to ask them questions about what are places that you consider sacred within this caucus area? What view planes do you really appreciate? What kind of density is tolerable for you? What would you, in the best of cases, what would you like to see in the future? And it essentially ended up training members of the caucus to run their own show. You know, the planning office was always there, the planning staff was there, and those long-term planning commissioners were there. But it was a fascinating process, and I don't know that I could have the energy to do it again, but I bet I could dig it up. But in that case, one of the things that we also knew is that when the county generated a plan and then took it out to a caucus area and showed what the county had come up with, all hell broke loose. You know, it was like, you didn't ask us, you don't care about us, you have no idea what we think. We're the people who know how this land smells and acts and feels and what we see on it and what it delivers. And so for that reason, the long-term planning served a multitude of purposes. We didn't get to the end of a planning process within a caucus and throw it at the that particular part of the community. They owned it, and then they would go before the Board of County Commissioners and very proudly show them what they really wanted for the future. And they were very proud of themselves. I mean, as individuals in those caucus areas and as small groups that got together. Now, what I was hearing today, I think, is that recently it sounds like the planning, the master plan writing has been done in-house, mostly by the planning staff, and then taken out some to the caucus areas. And I can see how that could happen if there's no interest. But is that right?
You know, oh, Cindy, do you want to go first?
Well, I don't mind jumping in. Remember that this round, we are calling it an update.
Mm-hmm.
There's a plan in place, and what we initiated in many of the areas is just a red line with all of the things that have come up since. Some of it is just logistical, you know, like now instead of having, 35 houses in the planning area, you have 45 houses in the planning area. Some of it's just updating in that regard, and some of it's updating, like Ellen said, there are new things that we should cover and we want to cover the plans that had not been covered in 2003. So we've added those areas and we've initiated the planning process that way in areas where there's not a strong voice. And so unfortunately, it's really been an uphill battle with engagement the last couple of years of the neighborhoods. I agree with you. Back when we had the long range planning group, there was a lot of engagement, and it really was more of a grassroots effort by the neighborhoods. It's hard to pull people out of the woodwork in some of these neighborhoods until there's a crisis. And so anything that we can do, because I think, obviously I really believe in long range planning. I believe that it's the foundation for everything that we do. And if we can get that ownership back, I don't think there could be anything better.
Suzanne, I'll add that by saying that there are several caucuses that have actually taken on the updates to their 2003 plans and drafted most of the update in their respective plans, and that's the case with the Maroon Creek Caucus, the Upper Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus, or the Upper Snowmass Caucus and the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucuses, and the Woody Creek Caucus. So those
And the frying pan.
and Emma as well. Yeah.
That's
And
great.
so, yeah, they actually have taken on the challenge and done those updates with our participation, but primarily taking the initiative to make them happen. So it's just in those areas where it seems to be in those areas where there are not as many full-time residents, perhaps, or for whatever reason, a little less interest in that kind of work, that we haven't had as much participation.
Mhm.
So
Thank you so much for all of your answers.
you're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
So Jasmine, Joe, Zachary Matthews, or Yvonne, questions for Ellen. Ellen, thank you so much. And I appreciate the conversation about the divide between the active caucuses and it's been interesting to watch the last couple of years. So I appreciate the fact that the two that are on your plate are not the cakewalks. I don't know how else to describe them. So I wish you the best of luck between now and the end of the year.
Thank you. Well, you all will be involved sooner rather than later. So yeah, it'll be a good endeavor to pursue.
I like the beer in the parking lot idea, sponsored by Suzanne Caspi. I think that's awesome.
Could you help me out with that?
I'm sorry, Suzanne.
Could you help me out with that?
Absolutely.
I'll
No,
give you-
Ellen, just as the action, whether or not planning and zoning can attend is another question, but can we just be kept abreast of the upcoming, if there are outreaches with Castle Creek and east of Aspen? At least I think it helps sort of fortify the planning and zoning if we do attend a couple of those meetings and sort of get to witness the process. That would be really helpful. So if you do have meetings scheduled between now and the overall hearings in front of planning and zoning and the county commissioners, that would be super helpful. But any other questions? Sorry, thank you so much for the presentation. And again, we all recognize there's a lot on your plate. And again, not the easiest of caucuses to update. So thank you. Any other commissioner questions for Ellen before we move over to Zachary Fugitive Hendricks?
No, good.
No additional hands. Zach, that you're the chair, so the table's yours.
Every time you say that, I keep expecting the FBI to like come through my door or something. So I'll be covering our climate action initiatives, what we've been working on through long range planning. To start with, we realized that we needed to do a comprehensive update of our baseline of what our emissions are and what our understanding what we actually need to take action upon. So we instigated 3, and I did an additional study. The first of these studies was actually a regional greenhouse gas inventory of the entirety of Pickens County. For the first time ever, we're actually doing it in partnership with the city of Aspen, the town of Basalt, and the town of Snowmass Village. And so what we'll get out of that is we'll get the emissions for the entire county, we'll get the emissions for each municipality, and then also the emissions for the unincorporated area. And that'll cover what the previous ones have covered. We're talking wastewater, waste generation, transportation, and building energy usage. So all of those will be captured. We'll be updating from our previous 2017 inventory, and we'll be bringing it all together to understand what changes have happened in the previous years. Understanding that 2020 was an abnormality given the COVID pandemic, it will be covering both 2019 and 2020, so we can actually see what the impacts of COVID were on our greenhouse gas emissions. So that's kind of the big overarching study that we'll be performing on greenhouse gas emissions. One of the big things that came out of our outreach last year was the carbon footprint of buildings as well. And so we are also performing a study on what is called the embodied carbon of residential buildings. So this is what goes into making a material, what goes into shipping the material, what goes into putting it into place, and then also what goes into disposing of it. So it's kind of the entire life cycle of the materials that go into a building. So the big ones that we'll be looking at are wood, concrete, drywall. We'll also be trying to take a crack at the finishing materials that go into a lot of our more complex buildings up here. Also, as part of that, we'll be looking at both the second home industry and the construction industry for what we call direct emissions. So this is the emissions that come from their daily operations versus the emissions that come from their materials. So those two studies together will hopefully give us a pretty comprehensive analysis of what everything is looking like in the county from an emissions standpoint. The last part of that is we are doing an internal inventory as well, or I did an internal inventory. And I'll just show, I'm not going to go in. It took me an hour last time I presented it, and I don't think any of us is looking for that right now. Oops, that's the wrong one. But you can watch the entire presentation of this inventory to the board on YouTube. It was August 24th to the BOCC. So this is a greenhouse gas emissions inventory of Pickens County's government internal operations. And so it really covers the big things, our facilities, our employee commutes and fleet, and then it brings it all together. But I try to make it a bit more entertaining than probably some of the studies you've seen in the past. So I used a couple GIS maps to illustrate it. For instance, this is going to take forever to load. So this is actually a heat map of where all of the employees for Pickens County actually live. And so you'll be able to go in, and I use this as the baseline to understand what are the emissions from the county operating from commutes. This is all going to be used to do our climate action plan update for Pickens County as a whole. I'm really going to each department and saying, what can you as a department do to minimize the emissions that are coming from these sectors? And then a subcategory will be, what can you do to help minimize emissions coming from the community as a whole? So we're trying to piece all of that together to kind of create a comprehensive approach to mitigating our greenhouse gas emissions. Understanding that emissions are only one side of the tail, we have to actually look at the economic impacts of any action that we're taking as well. We also just signed yesterday, I'm really excited because it took a while, the economic analysis RFP. So we'll be doing an economic analysis of the Roaring Fork Valley as a whole, not just Pickens County, understanding that we have a linked economy going through. So that will essentially, the boundaries will be using zip codes. So it'll go from Newcastle all the way up to Aspen and include the Crystal Valley up to Marble. And it really look at all of the sectors, breaking them down a bit more granularly than we normally get. For instance, when the state does it, they actually lump resource extraction into construction, which I think we'd all agree is not a fair reflection of what that industry is in our valley. So we're looking to really break it down and get an understanding of what each of these sectors are, what is getting generated from, how many employees are in each, so that when we move into actually making policy recommendations, we can say, well, this is how much emissions we'll mitigate, but this is what the impacts will be on our economy as a whole, not just making decisions in the blind. Before I move on, are there any questions on those 4 studies that I've covered? I've got about 11 things, so I'm going to try and break it into chunks to take questions at a time.
Suzanne Caskey.
I am admittedly an impatient woman. I've tried all of my life to develop patience, but it's just not going to work. I've given up now. So I want to know, when will, say, this particular group, the Planning and Zoning Commission, be able to get into the thick of this kind of long-term planning?
So these studies, the greenhouse gas emission studies, are scheduled to be completed mid-December to beginning of January. We didn't want them to be completed and overlap with the BOCC's budget season. So we'll likely be presenting them to the BOCC in January, though I'm more than happy to present those results as well to the P&Z when that's concluded as well. Those are really going to be more the baseline going forward. As Ellen alluded to, we're going to be trying to incorporate them into master plans as well. My hope is to take the data from that and actually break down the emissions by caucus. Once I have that overarching data, I can actually go back and use it with the initial information that we had. So those won't really be actual decisions, but they will be the baseline for future decisions. And I'm more than happy to give a presentation on the final results when we get them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and Jeffrey, well, I'm not sure who I should say. Let's do that on the P&Z level, because I think it's a part of our base level education as we go along, instead of fooling around for a year. I don't mean fooling around, but letting the BOCC continue to look at it, and we're not getting filled in the process. Or at least let's do some joint meetings so that we get filled in at the same time the BOCC does, and maybe staff doesn't have to do double duty.
And I will say we're also hoping that embodied carbon, so the way they're going to be breaking it out is in a square footage level. So you can actually tell on just a rough basis, every house is different, but you're able to tell on a rough basis what each house's embodied carbon footprint is. So hopefully when you start seeing proposals after that, you'll have a baseline to kind of understand what the environmental impacts of those proposed houses will actually be.
Great. I have one other question that maybe you will want to take the fifth, or the rest of the planning staff will want to. Do you believe that the BOCC really wants to take the heat and do this?
I believe that they are firmly behind climate action. We have not gotten to a point where we're actually proposing policies yet. Cindy will be getting into that a little bit later. Right now, we're just trying to create the baseline so that we can have an informed discussion with the community as a whole for whatever policy is proposed.
I see. Thank you.
And I'll let you proceed, Zach, but just can you keep in mind were the build out studies actually updated since they were presented to the BOCC? I guess is a question maybe you could touch on, but please continue.
Yeah, I can answer that one really quickly. The build out studies have been completed for the master plan areas that Ellen was just referring to. So those 4, the existing conditions have been completed. A comprehensive update of the countywide build out has not been completed yet. It's on our to-do list, but we don't have a time frame for it at this time.
Thank you.
So as part of all of those studies, one of the things we really wanted was to set an objective of where we're actually trying to go. So about mid-summer, I went before the board. I brought back our climate emergency resolution from 2019, and we established these 3 long-term climate action goals for the community as a whole. So these are going to be the kind of lodestones for every decision that we make going forward. The big one, obviously, is a 90% reduction in emissions by 2050 from the 2020 levels. And so all of those studies that I listed are using 2019 and 2020 as their baseline to create that objective for what we're trying to achieve in 2050. The second one is understanding that even if we went to net zero today, we stopped emitting all greenhouse gases, we would still feel the impacts from climate change. We're already seeing it with increased forest fires, increased storm intensity. And so we have a need to go ahead and update our existing infrastructure for resiliency. That was another thing that Ellen referred to in the master plans. It's a little bit less in there. Most of that includes for utilities. We'd like to see them go underground, clearing back enough from their utility lines, that sort of thing. But there's also all of those ideas of, is a road in the floodplain? What can we do to make that road more resilient in the case that we do experience a 100-year flood? So that kind of tackles all of those projects in the second goal. And then the last goal is understanding that the county can make all of the decisions that it wants to make, but it really doesn't work if we don't have buy-in from the community to make their own changes. And so reaching out in an equitable fashion to have informed discussions with the community on what can be done for climate action and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So those were the 3 goals that the board has formally ratified that went through in first reading and a second reading public hearing. So those are in place now to kind of guide any decisions that we make going forward. So those are kind of like the big overarching things. I'm going to kind of get stuck into a couple of the more granular projects that we're working on now as well. Coming out of the internal greenhouse gas inventory that we did for the county, we realized there are some things that we can start doing right now to mitigate our emissions as a government operation right now, really leading by example. The first of those is EV adoption in our fleet. However, that sounds really simple when you say it. It's far more complex when you're talking about a fleet. You can't just buy an EV vehicle and hope it works. We have to do all of the infrastructure that goes with it. So we're talking about EV chargers. We're talking about policies of where they're going to get charged, what time of day, what their use is a department using the appropriate vehicle. So that's an ongoing process. We started it. We really foresee it hitting the ground running end of 2022, beginning of 2023, when we figured out all of the budgetary impacts, where they're all going, all of the nitty-gritty questions that come up from that kind of EV adoption. The next big project that we're working on is we want to achieve full electrification of all county buildings by 2040. So we've just issued an RFP as well to do a capital improvement plan for all of our buildings, really assessing what will it cost to take this building to a fully electric, what needs to go in, what is near its end of life. So we're not just taking a brand new boiler out and putting in a new one, really trying to tee it up so as things come offline, we can replace them in a beneficial manner to hit that 2040 goal and hit full electrification. And the benefit of that is Holy Cross Energy will have a net zero grid by 2030. So if we've done that, we've canceled out all of the emissions from our facilities by that point. The last internal action that we're taking, and I'm not really leading this one, but I am helping Ann Driggers, our treasurer, with, is we're doing an ESG assessment of our investments. We don't really hold stocks, but we do hold a lot of bonds, and then we hold ownership, and it's Colorado Trust. It's a state-run investment tool for local governments to ensure they're getting a return on investment in a highly liquid fashion. And so I'm working with her to make sure that the investments that we have are not being invested in fossil fuels and that we're really spending our money or putting our money where our goals and our priorities are. I'm helping her. That's mostly her project. So I don't know when we'll see that one back anytime soon. So before I go into the next couple projects, any questions on what I just discussed there? I'll take the silence as a no. All right, the last two are kind of the really big ones. They're the ones that I'm pretty excited about. The first one is the microgrid project that we're working on with the airport, the public works facility, the RAFTA bus barn, and the Holy Cross Energy offices and substations at the AABC. This was initially a feasibility grant. We were awarded in 2019, but because of COVID, they gave us an extension to June 2022 to complete it. We're hopefully going to get it done before that. And we're in the process of getting our grant for implementation funds in order. But essentially, this system would install a number of large scale batteries. I think we're talking about 5 to 6 1 megawatt batteries to back up the critical services of those facilities so that if there's a catastrophic failure, like the Lake Christine fire, where we were one pole from losing all electricity to the upper valley, these critical facilities can still operate, can provide emergency services. And in the event that we structure it correctly, perhaps even distribute electricity back out into the community as a whole during such a catastrophe. We'll be looking to tap into the 5 megawatt solar farm when that is up as running, to tap into that. And we're also looking to install additional solar on all of the facilities so that it can really be an enclosed, self-resilient going through. This will be the first time in the country that multiple public facilities of different entities have been looped together. There's a couple airports that are on microgrids. There's a couple individual government buildings on microgrids, but we've really never seen 3 public entities come together like this and link on such a uniform project. The other side of that is, as you all know, during the winter, our largest energy load is heat. And so we're looking at what's called a district heating system. So this would be a series of pipes, essentially pipes that would link the buildings, and they would shift heat from where it's not needed, say in the Rafta bus barn when they're heating their buses in the winter inside, to another building where it is needed so that you don't have to trigger the boiler. Those have not been implemented much in the United States. They're pretty prevalent in like Sweden and Norway, but not so much in the United States. So we're looking to pair that all together so we can create a resilient system. We can minimize our energy use overall. And then the last side of that is, as you all know, electricity is generated from a solar panel during the middle of the day, but it's most needed often at the end of the day or night when the sun isn't strong. So hopefully when nothing is going on that's bad and that system isn't needed, we can have that additional greenhouse gas reduction effort for Holy Cross's grid by using the energy being generated from that 5 megawatt solar farm and distributing it back out into the community so they don't have to trigger a coal-fired power plant somewhere else. So that's a project that's been ongoing. It's been about 2 years of my life now, so I'm pretty excited to see that one hit the ground. And the other one is the one that Jeffrey has been giving me some grief about, the fugitive methane capture at the Coal Basin Mining Complex. This is not a county-led effort. There is a collaborative group between CORE, Holy Cross, Wilderness Workshop, and we've also been in discussions with BLM and the United States Forest Service. And the idea here is that there's a considerable amount of methane leaking out of the Coal Basin complex. And methane is 86 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So it has a significant more impact on global warming, though it does it in a shorter time frame. So methane will dissipate from the atmosphere in about 20 years, whereas carbon dioxide is up there for a couple hundred. So tackling methane allows us to make a really significant short-term impact on climate change. The idea behind that is you plug up all of the vents with concrete, you suck it out and you set it on fire, which converts it to carbon dioxide. It's not perfect, but it's 86 times less potent. So it does make a significant impact on that mitigation. The big issue there is there's currently not a federal regulatory framework for how to do this at an abandoned mine. So we'd be really breaking ground on how this is done. There's 2 pathways that we're seeking for this. The first one I call the special dispensation method. So there's a little caveat in the Department of Interior's regulations that allows them to make a special dispensation for a single project for something like this. And then the other one is that we're hoping to leverage our partners with CC4CA and other agencies to really instigate them making a regulatory overhaul so that we can carry this on to other mines. There's currently 15 abandoned coal mines in Pitkin County alone. And I have a map of Colorado really quickly that shows them all. So every single one of those dots there is an abandoned coal mine in Colorado. There's 1,573 abandoned coal mines. So you can imagine that we could make a pretty significant impact if we can do this regulatory overhaul and replicate this project. We're hoping to use Coal Basin as a pilot and then carry it out. And it really goes beyond just the state as well. There's actually 48,529 abandoned coal mines in the United States. So we have the ability to potentially offset almost the entire natural gas sector with projects tackling these mines. So that's the big ambition. The short-term ambition is just to tackle Coal Basin, and hopefully that'll be the domino that tackles all of the other ones. So those are all of the projects that we've have going. Some of them have been completed. Some of them will be complete by the end of this year. And then a few of the other ones are going to be multi-year processes. So we'll try and keep you updated. Sometimes they go in spurts though, so there won't be anything for a while. And then there'll be a ton over a 2-week period. So we'll try and keep you informed, but there's a lot going on in the county right now on climate action. So those are all my projects. I'm happy to take any other questions you may have.
Questions? Suzanne, I'm going to come back to you. I want to see if there's anyone else. I'm coming back to you, but
Okay.
Suzanne Keski for Zachary.
Zachary, I just want to tell you again what I think I've told you before, and that is that I hope that we can preserve your brain to use for future generations in helping us with this. You and the rest of the planning staff through the last year, well, long time, but especially in the last year and a half, make me so excited about living in this valley, just as excited as I was when I first came here. And it makes me very proud of, it also makes me very proud to live in this valley. Thank you so much for all of your work.
Thank you.
Questions for Zachary? Otherwise, I probably will echo what Suzanne just said, which is I would also add the kudos of it's really nice to see the county working well with both CORE and Holy Cross and the area, the ABC. So I know these are pilots that have been, started years ago. So it's really nice to see the cooperation across multiple entities. And it's nice to hear that, your plate is almost as empty as Ellen's. So kudos. Joe Kraybacher, Zachary Matthews, Cliff Weiss, Jasmine, Yvonne, sort of questions down the Zoom trail. Anyone else for Zach in terms of his work over the past year? So Zach, thank you so much and appreciate your time and appreciate the time, of the whole team. Again, I think that the county is setting some pretty amazing examples and I'm being truly, impressed with how much work's going on, the collaboration between so many entities. And I know you've responded to a lot of RFPs and bringing all these projects on board. So I keep thinking as Cindy's about to present, that all these circles overlap. So we sort of have the Venn diagram of the three of you, and they all sort of need to come together. And that's sort of why we're pushing you and pushing Ellen and saying, okay, we need that plan, because at the end of the day, we're looking at the ski area, or we're looking at, automobile infrastructure and fast chargers, or the EOTC's back with us again and, building 32-foot tall bathrooms and leach fields in the middle of, a highway. So it's really nice to hear all these pieces come together. I don't see any other hands. I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
Actually, before Cindy jumps in, may I have a quick comment that in all our spare time, we are working on methodology for preserving Zach's brain, on the.
I'm laughing because I think
That's where the beer's involved.
Chinese already have it done. It's all loaded.
Isn't there a trial currently going on with regards to that called Bad Blood? What was her name? Sorry. Theranos? Isn't that the firm that does that?
Well,
Cindy, the floor is all yours.
thanks. With Zach's brain, Ellen's brain, a lot of work. All of this does come together. So I appreciate what you said, Jeffrey, about the Venn diagram, really, because my next part is to just kind of update you on several other pieces, but ultimately get to, just kind of logistics of where we're going with a look at the code and growth management. But there's a lot, there are other pieces that we are participating in for other topics such as housing and a resilient workforce and the types of things that the state provides some guidance on So just so you know, we're involved at a state level with some grant funding, and in, a couple weeks, we'll be reaching out to a number of different stakeholders in the Valley to talk about workforce resiliency in the Valley and what that means. But this has been promoted by the governor's roadmap, if you will, for workforce resiliency. We're also helping look at, or starting to try to help develop more of a regional look at housing, at least with the Upper Valley, what some of those pieces and parts are. There's more than just the workforce housing. We have vulnerable population housing, as we've noted with our homeless population and other populations in the Valley that are considered vulnerable as far as housing is concerned. And then we also have been looking at just Pitkin County itself and how do we attract and maintain employees to do the work of the county. So we've got those kind of housing projects rolling that I've been a little bit more a part of over the last several months, on top of some of these other projects, just so you don't think that I'm not doing anything up there on the second floor. But we also have been trying to get together more with the Board of County Commissioners relative to some of their policies, and felt like the board is somewhat new to the whole concept of growth management. In the past, we've had Board of County Commissioner members who have been in your seat as Planning Commission members, and they sort of gotten their education through, the hard work that you guys do on the day-to-day code work, as well as understanding the big picture with planning. So we felt like we needed to take a step back and do some education work with the Board of County Commissioners. And on, I think it was August the 10th, and you can go back to take a look at that Zoom meeting. We did sort of a history of growth management with the Board of County Commissioners, and it turned out to be a whole lot of fun because we had the efforts of the Freak Power movement supply us with some information, and there was a movie put out by the Fat City Gallery and those guys called Freak Power. We were able to take some clips from their movie and do the early days of Shellman and Edwards and some of their work and pull that together in a fun presentation. So if you have a chance, go back August 10th and take a look at that. If the P&Z wants their own presentation, of course, we're happy to do that. And then again, July 14th, we did a follow-up presentation on how growth management works today with the Board of County Commissioners. So you could look at the July 14th agenda, and Suzanne Wolf and her planners were able to bring the Board of County Commissioners up to speed on how growth management is working today. And we intend to do a third round with the Board of County Commissioners to kind of tee up where the questions have come from the P&Z over the last couple of years on what is it we're trying, why are we looking at growth management, what are we trying to solve as far as some of our scoring systems, what's relevant, what's not relevant today. So just so you know, we've done sort of that homework with education with the Board of County Commissioners over the last several months. And I'm sorry, Suzanne, I think you had your hand up.
I was just trying to say, yes, 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 I'd love to see it before the P&Z, but I also watched the BOCC portion of it. And there are other people on this commission who are still in the full-time job phase of their lives. And I'm not, so I might have more time to do such a thing. But are the rest of you interested in seeing that the Freak Power presentation and the how growth management came about in the first place? No.
If you are interested, raise your hand. If you're not, okay. Okay. I think I saw 3 hands, 4 hands. 3, 4. Okay. Well, we'll find some time then. And if nothing else, we can tee up that video for you that, of that presentation, not actually do it again, but tee that up for you if you think that might work. Suzanne, do you think we could do that, or do you want us to redo that presentation?
Are you talking to this Suzanne?
Yes.
Well, I'd love for you to redo the presentation, but I don't know. I can't see all of the gallery, so I don't know how many other people were raising their hands, and I don't want to add something that complicates other commissioners' lives.
Well, I'll coordinate with Jeffrey on that and get back to you guys.
Could you offer a free beer?
That just keeps coming up. We may have to do that somewhere out, and it's getting cold, but we'll figure out a place. But
I'll bring some free COVID tests.
Yeah.
That'll definitely draw them in.
Yeah. Anyhow, so there we go. We to bring you up to speed on that, but that's all in preparation for the fact that, as you guys know, almost a year ago, I think it's a year ago tomorrow, ingrained in my brain, we had the public come out and say, no, you've got to do more public outreach in growth management and work more to get more community members involved in looking at the growth management process and growth management in the land use code and what that's all about. So the Board of County Commissioners in their previous retreat said, yep, we want to do that. And we're going to make that happen in 2022, starting in 2022. And I was hopeful that by now, this time of the fall, we would have a game plan for you. But unfortunately, the Board of County Commissioners has been so busy with all the things that we've been talking about that we're not going to get another updated retreat time with them until after the first of the year to be able to talk about the strategy of how to move forward. There's been discussion of whether or not this should be an effort that looks a little bit like the airport effort, where we have different committees looking at different items, or whether or not this should be a smaller, intense group of citizens who are willing to put the time in and then make recommendations out. And on top of that, then have public forums open for discussion as that smaller committee moves along. So we've got a couple alternatives to present to the board about how that might work, but so far that has not been figured out. And so I don't really have a lot to update you on as far as that process and the exact time that might get rolling. But what I'm very proud of is that Ellen and Zach have been doing the work to get us in a position where we're going to have the master plans updated. So we'll have those inform, what we're doing from that side of the world. And we're then also going to have a lot of updated information relative to the climate action part of how we're looking at the purpose of growth management today and how that might fold into a look at a new growth management. So we've got the work underway and hopefully prepped for when the board decides on a game plan on how to move forward with the public outreach process. So that's really, in a nutshell, what I had to say. Do you have questions of me with that? Joe?
Yeah, just going back to your Freak Power, you said August 10, 2020.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2021.
Okay, and that's available, just so everybody knows, on the Pitkin County, pitkincounty.com website, where you can go to. Why don't you tell us where it's at?
Oh, it's on the Board of County Commissioners agenda that day. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact hour, but if you just pulled that up in the archive, you should be able to find history of growth management. It might say part 1.
No,
And
what we
And then July 14th, you said, was that 2021 as well? It sounded like that was
Yes.
after the first one.
Yeah, July.
That should be September 14th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, that's where I was
Sorry,
confused.
Suzanne.
You can also access them via YouTube, the Pitkin County Government channel. And Elaine Boschman has gone back and timestamped all of the meetings. So you should be able to jump right to that particular agenda item.
Great, thanks, Avery. That's all I had, thanks.
Yeah. And we try to incorporate some of the things that you guys have asked us for and thought were important when we went out and asked about how we should proceed with the growth management. And Joe, I think it was you, I thought it was an excellent point that really we should get the master plans shored up, as a beginning point. And so we hope to be there with those. And a lot of the other research that we are doing is based on our initial outreach group in 2020, from 2020. So.
Additional commissioner questions for Cindy. I don't know if that's a hand, Cliff.
The hand.
Suzanne Caskey has a hand.
Cindy, I think that there was a certain number. I don't think it was this diffuse group, but a specific number that went to the Board of County Commissioners saying we need more discussion overall in the community before we do anything having to do with reviewing growth management. Did those people have specific ideas about how we could do that? Or would they be willing to organize it?
Well, I doubt it. It's a lot of work, but yeah, we did get a handful of comments, some mostly in writing, and those I believe we put up on our website. That's about our growth website on our Pitkin County Community Development website. We have a growth management portion of that, and we put up all of the feedback that we got on that website so that everybody could see it. And I could go back and look and see, some of those comments. And you're right. I mean, it would be a good place to start to see if some of those folks wanted to get heavily involved or begin helping with that outreach.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Thanks.
Vaughn, welcome to the fire. Further, I mean, this has been wonderful, and thank you for having a conversation this evening, and both for the formality and the informality of the presentations. One of the big takeaways I'm hearing mostly from Suzanne's comments is partly, and it goes all the way back to Ellen's presentation as well as Zach's, is just overall communication. And I hear it at the planning and zoning level, but I'm also hearing it at the public level. And probably like Suzanne, I subscribe to Civic Plus, and so I'm aware of what's going on, both at the planning and zoning level, but also at the BOCC level. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure if anyone in the public would ever subscribe to Civic Plus, nor do I expect every planning and zoning commissioner to subscribe. But it is a good way as planning and zoning commissioners to understand what's going on with open space and trails, with BOCC, sort of across all of the citizen boards as well as the elected officials. And I found that rather than just relying on staff to communicate, I found that personally pretty rewarding, even if you just scan the agenda and then don't touch the packet. But that's that's again my own method. Cindy may have another idea.
I think that's great. If you want to take on that yourselves, and yeah, definitely I could do a better job of communicating back to you all these things more often than we do. But I feel like you've got enough going on, and I hate to just ask you to come to a meeting for a short update. So
no, I mean, this session.
That's our balance.
Yeah, no, this session's been incredibly helpful because again, I think it's probably somewhere, to Zach and his team representing a couple of years of work, the same, with yourself and with Ellen. So it's really nice to have this all brought, sort of in one session. So we appreciate your time and your effort in bringing it together.
Thanks. And if you think about anything and questions come up, please feel free to call any of us. So that's it for us. That's for our presentation.
Excellent. Suzanne Wolf, any updates from you?
Oh, I went dark. Sorry. No, I don't think I have anything else, Jeffrey. There's probably something I'm forgetting to tell you, but
I've heard we're going to be really busy, but I see that we have no agenda for the next fortnight and a half.
we do have a few new caseload items that have come in, but I don't know how soon they'll be on your agendas. My world is trying to balance my poor planners who are overworked and all of the cases that are in front of them, a lot of which are ones that you don't see. So, trying to sort out when things come to the P&Z has a lot to do with how much else they have on their plates already. But there are, I think actually, 3 or so different applications that have come in. We did get one growth management application for a new development right. But again, we're probably looking to, if any of those are going to come your way, I'd be looking at December at this point. So Cindy and Ellen and I can talk more about, if there's anything else to try and put on your agendas. Joanne has been working on some code amendments. So, again, maybe we'll slip some of those in. So we'll let you know.
And if I could jump in really quick,
Please.
Jeff, for the new members, there in the land use code, there are various applications that go just to staff administratively for us to work on. There are those that go to the P&Z, and there are those that go to the Board of County Commissioners. So what Suzanne's doing is juggling all of those and trying to keep those in motion so that we actually don't keep people longer than we have to after they've submitted an application. And so there are these gaps, and it feels like gaps for the P&Z, unfortunately, where you don't see applications in front of you. But as Suzanne said, we are going to be starting to fill up some of your agendas with more long range master planning. And then I don't know, Suzanne, I think another piece of information that just is informative for the P&Z to understand what we have going on is that we now ask people to sign up for pre-application conferences. So we have a bunch of people stuck in pre-application conferences, and And Suzanne, you might want to explain how that works in your world so that, so the P&Z understands there's quite a bit of backup work. So when you hear the public complaining that their applications aren't getting through the process, you just understand a little bit better what we're doing to try to make that flow. So Suzanne, if you could maybe give a 5-second account of how that works, that would be great.
Yeah, I think, again, for us, a pre-app conference is when we meet with somebody to explain what they need to pull together to have an application. So in the past, we kind of let people just call us randomly and we do pre-apps and go on about our lives. And then, then everything got really too busy. So we actually now have people submit a request for a pre-app conference in our SAGES system. And that gives me the ability to know how many are out there, which is usually a lot. And probably I'm trying to make a little headway, but I mean, we're probably working on pre-apps now. I'm assigning that came in 2 months ago. So that's how backlogged we are. And that's just the nature of how much capacity we have to keep everything going and still also meet with those folks about bringing in new applications. So again, it's giving us the ability to know what all's out there and manage it through that, the permit tracking system, which is helpful. But unfortunately, with pre-apps as well as applications, we have people who are on wait lists.
So
If I'm
sorry. We have quite a few people on that wait list. Correct, Suzanne. So it's going to be a while before we get through this backlog of applications.
And I was just going to add that while we'll have holidays in November and December, which has some impact on meetings, in addition to the current applications, you will be seeing the East of Aspen master plan update sooner rather than later. So look for that. And we really look forward to working with you in an informal work session and then in a public hearing and getting that update complete. So yeah, stay tuned on that.
Suzanne, one bizarre question. Whatever happened to the world of 5G? It seemed like we would see mandatory applications every 3 days, and we've seen 0 in 2021. Did that just bypass us and sits at the VOCC level? And you can say you don't know, but we had one, yeah.
No, I mean, we had a few applications or one server, come in with 4 different sites. We deemed it incomplete. And I think that's been sitting for over a year now. So no, we have not been bombarded, which I'm very thankful for. We have done a few exemptions, which are really when people are replacing equipment on an existing tower. And when they submit those, they are very careful about citing all of the FCC regulations about how much time we're allowed to sit on those before they get whatever they want. And they don't care what we have to say. So it is interesting when I have gotten a few of those. Thankfully, they're ones that I could say, oh no, this is just replacing existing, swapping out equipment. That's easy. Go for it. As opposed to new sites. Thankfully, we just haven't seen the applications yet.
And I guess one for Leslie is not on the call, but it could be for Leslie or Cindy or Suzanne. But if there will be a groundbreaking of the Pitkin County Solar Project, it would be nice if Planning and Zoning or some of them, all of the members, given it's a 35-acre site and it's outdoors, to Joe's point, it would be nice if there was a groundbreaking that Planning and Zoning, who spent several months reviewing the application and listening to public comment, would be invited to that groundbreaking.
I do know Leslie was out yesterday with them on site, and I think they're within days of finishing installing the equipment. And I think she said they were going to be running a test pretty soon. So we'll definitely pass that along.
Wonderful. Any other questions for staff, county commissioners? Feedback? It is 6:47 p.m. Any further business this evening? Thank you to Bonnie for handing out the links to those two sessions. The one I would direct, my own personal direction would be, I found very informative the map that showed the overall county build out by caucus. I would love to see that. When you guys have spare time in 2024, I'd love to see that one updated, because I think it's really informative at the county level, but also I think the caucuses would really appreciate, given they're having conversations about house and house size, they would also appreciate it. So if there's nothing else, I would be happy to give you 12 minutes back into your evening and look for a motion to adjourn. Again, but given we have this incredible both attendance from P&Z, welcome to the new members. Maybe we'll have a beer in a parking lot outside the hospital. I do not know, but hopefully we can meet in person at some point. Anything further? I see smiles. Yvonne, welcome. And again, apologies if this is this digital thing, which is kind of goofy.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
No. Do you want to give a quick
adjourn?
before Cliff's adjournment? Do you want to give yourself? It would be wonderful, and I apologize. Suzanne had the opportunity to introduce herself when she joined. Do you want? I mean, and for those of us who didn't watch your interview, do you mind introducing yourself to the? You have most of staff, and most of the Planning and Zoning Board.
So basically, my name's Ivan Kassar, and I've lived in the Valley for 30 years. And I, just like most people in this town, follow a lot of things that are going on. And, we have questions, and sometimes if we have time, in the old days, you would meet people and talk about issues. These days, even pre-COVID, like society seems to connect and communicate differently. And it needs to be more kind of formalized for people to. In the old days, you sat at the Wiener Stube and you had the newspapers there, and or out at the Main Street Bakery, and you talked about what's in the newspaper. And that's kind of getting a little bit, rarer as an experience. And someone told me about the position coming open, and I thought this would be an interesting way to, if anything, educate myself at a deeper level, and spending some time on the issues and participating, at a level that hopefully will be very satisfying, and just listening to whether it's the sustainability issues and programs in place, which I'm very interested in, and so many other issues. I look forward to the reading and the education and the learning and the interacting with you guys who have been at it for a while, and I look forward to it. And I look forward to a beer in a parking lot somewhere too.
And apologies for putting you on the spot, but I think Suzanne put herself on the spot, so we you deserve the same. And welcome, and it's a good time to join again, given you got a nice update from the long range planners. This was our first metro district in a while, but it was I think a good first.
Are there many metro districts like this in the county?
So Cindy or Suzanne could answer, but there's a lot of places where the service from the county ends and a metro district appears, and it's road maintenance and it's topping. And the
Mhm.
benefit of being a metro district is you're a taxing authority. And so the
Right.
question we didn't ask the applicant is, well, I hope you're booking for 105% because we Pitkin County charge you 5% to be a metro district as we collect, through the tax revenue. So, I'm sure if you polled the people on this call that most of us live in metro districts, if we're in subdivisions, because the county roads end and then it's a
Mhm.
privately maintained road. And so, no, tonight's up, and Joe can correct me, anyone can correct me. But tonight's was really nice because they're basically saying, yeah, all the homeowners have bought into this, even though they're not part of a homeowners association. So I think we have, it's the nice of, if Jeanette Jones was on it, she'd say it's really good if you have both a homeowners association, which is sort of rules and regs, and then you also have a metro district, which is a taxing authority, for maintenance of roads and bridges, et cetera. So I think it's, in my 3-year tenure, this is the first one new that's appeared. But again, I think it's a good tool to use, in Pitkin County where the county services end, and there's the county provides a quality of service for each of the roads within the county, for example, snow maintenance removal, et cetera. And then the metro district picks up from where the county ends. And so Suzanne or Ellen or Cindy may have a different take, but that's living in a metro district. That's my take. I'm seeing quiet. Everyone, please enjoy your evening. I have a motion to close out the meeting from Cliff. Do I have a second?
Motion fails for lack of second.
Yeah. Joe, please.
Second.
Thank you, Zachary. Thank you. Everyone enjoy your evening, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Good evening.